great is the love that the Father has lavished on us. How great to be able to be called a child of God. The question is, how many people can God love? It's kind of a trick question. And I know God loves everyone. But the number of people that God can actively be loving is dependent upon you. Because God depends on you to be His witnesses. He called His disciples, and as He called the disciples, as Jesus was with them at the last time in that upper room, and He showed Himself to them, He presented His hands and feet, He ate the broiled fish. As He was doing that, He said, "You are my witnesses. And you need to go out and tell the rest of the world, so that the rest of the world, beginning in Jerusalem and traveling all around the world, will know who I am." And Jesus, on that day that He was going to be crucified, knew that He was going to be arrested, gathered together with His disciples one last time to share the Passover meal with them. And as He was at the table with them, what did He do? We read it in John chapter 13. He gets up from the table and He goes over to the wash basin and He pours water into the basin. And after He pours the water into the basin, He goes to each one of His disciples and He kneels at their feet and washes their feet. He gets up from the service of washing feet and sits back down after putting on His robe, and He says, "Do you know what I've done for you? You call me Lord and teacher, and that's the right thing. If I, your Lord and your teacher, can wash your feet, you should do the same for one another." A little later in John, He says, "Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends." And He said, He's called you friend. He laid down His life for you, so that you might be able to pick your life up and begin to live your life for others. He encourages us to receive His love, but not to just allow His love to reside in us so that we're just a round sphere that sits there. Rather, He says, receive the love and then make sure that you give that love and that joy to other people. Begin to bounce. Begin to love in such a way that you are bouncing to other people, and begin to use what God has given you for other people. Put your love into action. There's an old, ridiculous story. And I know that it's old because I've heard it many times, and you've probably heard it too many times, but you're going to hear it once more. About a fisherman who loved to go fishing and would come back in after fishing with a boat full of fish. All of his friends were amazed because he wasn't out there very long. And a stranger saw him come in with this boatload of fish, and he said, "Would you take me fishing with you?" And he said, "Sure. 5 o'clock tomorrow morning we'll go fishing. Come meet me at the lake." So they get to the lake, and they get into his boat, and he trolls out to the middle of the lake. And the stranger looks, and he notices all he has is a net. And there's an old box that could be a tackle box, but there's no poles. And he sits there, turns off the motor, opens the box, pulls out a stick of dynamite, lights the dynamite, throws it into the water. Boom! With the net, he skims all the fish into his boat. Well, it happens that it's Darwin Emmons was the stranger, a game warden. He says, "Sir, I'm going to have to arrest you. It's illegal to do that." The guy doesn't even flinch, reaches down, gets a second stick of dynamite, lights it, lets the fuse burn a little bit, answers the game warden and says, "Are you going to fish or are you going to just sit there?" I think that's what 1 John is calling us to. He's saying, are you going to fish or are you going to just sit here? Are you going to be actively spreading the love of God to other people, or are you just going to sit in the pew and watch others? He calls us to be in action. I wish we had that dynamite right there behind us to get us moving just that much quicker. But he wants us to be in action. He doesn't want us to just give lip service to what he's talking about. He said, it isn't right that you would talk about my love. What you need to do is begin living my love. Living my love in such a way that other people will see and experience that love firsthand. That's his call to each one of us, is to love one another in such a way that we represent Christ to the world. Christian love is always keeping in touch with God's commandments as well. And as I look at the world around us and I hear all of these talks of love and how we need to love one another and how we need to respect one another and how we need to always look out for one another, they're doing it without God in mind. And we're taking God out of the picture so many times. I think it began back in the 60s and 70s with the whole idea of situational ethics. Now, I'm not trying to bash situational ethics. It's a good try at allowing us the opportunity to begin looking at things in a way that asks, how would Christ love? But if we say that if it's a loving thing, then it's an okay thing, you can justify everything as being something that's done out of love. You could justify killing someone and saying, well, you at least put them out of their misery, or you're helping the rest of the world by killing them. And you can justify that somehow out of love in situations, and that isn't in keeping with the laws of God at all. The love of Jesus keeps us connected with the commandments. He said, I did not come to abolish the laws and the prophets, but to fulfill them. I came to be the fulfillment of the law, the fulfillment of the prophecies. And so anything that calls us to do differently than Jesus would do is not right. And so if we say, well, it's okay in this situation if I tell a little white lie, we're fooling ourselves. But my wife will feel so bad if she hears me tell her that I spent all of this money on a new fishing boat. So I'm not going to tell her really how much I spent. And she'll be okay with that. No. The Bible calls us to be truthful. The Bible calls us to share in truth everything that we are. And the truth really will set us free. Or we might go through some troubled times in the process, because if we're honest and truthful, then we might get into some conflict. But that conflict is better than lie. Because it says in the commandments, thou shalt not lie, or bear false witness against thy neighbor. So if it's against one of the commandments, then it really isn't right. To love God is to love the same way that Jesus loved. Not worrying about the self and worrying about what other people are experiencing. And that brings the second point, is love is reaching out in mission to other people. It's never about fulfilling your own desires, but it's always about fulfilling the desire of Christ to reach as many people as possible. We're coming up on a season that I really enjoy. We're going to be traveling with our youth group. I'm going to be traveling with our youth group. And if there's any of you that want to travel with our youth group, you're welcome to come to the meeting this afternoon and find out about it. But we're going to go down to Kansas City again this year, June 24th. We're also going to Des Moines this year, May 25th, for a one-day trip. We're going to be in mission. And the reason I love that weekend is because when we get together and go to these places, all of a sudden a light bulb goes on in so many of the youth's eyes that have never done this before. And they actually see what love in action can accomplish. And you can see the joy that it brings to other people when you do something kind to them. I'm never going to forget the year that we traveled down to Kansas City. And my friend Rev Bob is kind of in charge of the trip. And he pushes a little hard sometimes. And this particular year, I was still weighing over 250 pounds. And I was really hot by the end of noon time. And we were going to work in the afternoon yet. And we were pulling weeds in the Salvation Army. And it was around the building. And it was never seen by anybody, really, except the people that came into that building. And we were pulling these weeds. And I was sweating. And I was getting hotter. And I was wanting to get back and take my shower. And I was anxious to do that. And I kept saying, Bob, is it time to quit? No, we're not done yet. And then after we got done with that building, he took us to another building right next door. And we were pulling weeds. And by that time, I was just exhausted. And he said, it's time to go. And I was the first up and walking and leading everybody back to where the big blue bus was. And as we were approaching the bus, there were 3 people sitting over here on the wall. And I could tell that they were probably homeless, and they were wanting something. And one of them started to speak to me and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're here on a mission trip, and we just got done pulling a whole bunch of weeds, and it was really hot. And then I just brushed her off and went into the bus. Bob comes along. And I'm ready to go. And I look in my rearview mirror, and what is Bob doing? He's talking to this woman that was trying to talk to me. And all of a sudden, he comes over to the back of the bus and he says, Kevin, I need three things of water. These people are thirsty. And I thought, oh, goodness. And so he takes 3 of our last bottles of water and offers them to those people. You hear me the way I was feeling. He gets on the bus. And he has tears in his eyes and joy in his heart. He said, you'll never believe this, Kevin. I said, what? He said, that woman asked what we were doing. She heard that we were a mission group. And she was saying thank you to me. And he said, before I came and got that water, she reached into her purse, and I know that she didn't have anything in her purse, and she pulled out this crumpled dollar bill, and she gave it to me, and she said, I want to say thank you to your group for doing that ministry. Would you please accept this and use this for your mission work? And Bob still has that crumpled dollar bill today in his Bible. And each year as we travel down to Kansas City, he usually pulls that out at some point and retells that story. I missed the blessing because I was unwilling to love. I was at the end of my day. I was at the end of my frustration level, the end of whatever, and I was not willing to open myself up to love anymore. Bob opened up and loved. And because of that, God was able to bless our whole group. I hope that you'll take an opportunity to minister to somebody, even when you don't feel like you can. Don't miss the blessings that giving love can do for you. As we approach the end of this sermon, I also want to mention that God's love is first given to us so that we can share it with others. Confirmation has concluded for the most part. We have our celebration next week. And every year, as part of our conclusion of confirmation, we gather together and they do all their memory work. And that's just a reason for me to gather them together. So they're nervous. And then after we do the memory work, we play some games. And then we sit in a circle. And for some of them, they don't experience this very often. For others, they probably get lots of positive affirmation everywhere. One person sits in the center of the circle, and everybody else goes around the circle and tells that person what they mean to them and how special they are. It's not long before tears are starting to flow on faces of both the recipient of the gracious words and the givers of words. And And it's a wonderful, loving time that we spend together and affirm one another. I didn't know how much that meant to people, but I did receive an email that said that their child really appreciated that. They had no clue that classmates felt that way about it. Why is it that we don't share those positive affirmations more often? Allow others to know how special they are to us. We think that just as Tevian or whatever he was, Goldie in the Fiddler on the Roof, and Goldie said, well, for 25 years I've done all these things for you. If that's not love, what is? But he wants to hear, do you love me? Sometimes we have to say it, but always we have to live it. So I encourage you to encourage the person sitting next to you today. Let's begin there, because that's the easy point, because you almost know the person that's sitting next to you, so you can encourage them, affirm them. But then take that next step and love somebody that you just meet, and do something kind for them. Don't miss an opportunity to receive God's blessing by being a blessing to someone else. Amen.